What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Huddle Up, where we talk all things sports. We're back with a video after quite some time, and today we are running through all of the wild card games in just 7 minutes. Now, we're going to start off with, in my opinion, one of the best games of the weekend, the Bears versus the Packers. Now, the Packers haven't been the best team in the league, obviously, this year, a 9-7-1 record, with that tie being to the Cowboys, who didn't even make playoffs this year. But on the other hand, the Bears have been just great overall all year. Obviously a few losses, but comes with every rebuild year. Last year they weren't in the best position, but they were looking on higher hopes for the upcoming season, which is now this season, where they're in the playoffs. And Caleb Williams just did great in that second half. They were down 21-3 at halftime, and people are comparing it to the Tom Brady comeback in the Super Bowl. I mean, obviously not at all the same thing, but was a very entertaining game. Both teams played well. However, the Packers obviously defensively and offensively struggled in the second half, and the Bears really just got it together with the halftime adjustments. Ben Johnson looking like a great head coach for the Bears, and honestly, overall, it's just looking up for them, and I actually have them winning their next game. I'll put it up on the screen. And with our next overview, we have the Panthers versus the Rams, and personally, I'm a Panthers fan, so this one hurts. However, we did put up a really good fight. Very entertaining game, very back and forth. Obviously, the future is looking bright for Carolina with a good performance in the playoffs against the Rams. Bryce Young looking like the future. Jalen Coker with some good catches, a good touchdown catch at the end. And the final score was 34-31. For the Rams, it's looking okay. However, their next game is against the Bears, who are looking like a very dominant team. So, will the Rams win their next game? In my opinion, no. Again, I'll put my picks up on the screen for the divisional round. I have them losing to the Bears, but I do think it will be a very good game, and no matter who comes out of that is definitely a Super Bowl contender. This game also goes to show that the NFC South will definitely be a hot division next year, with the Saints and Tyler Shuck turning up towards the end of the season, as well as the Atlanta Falcons, who just fired Raheem Morris after a 8-9 season. But after an 8-9 season, the Panthers were in the playoffs. So very different scenarios going on in the NFC South, but it's looking bright for all those teams. Now, let's talk about the Bills and the Jags. Very defensive game, yet a very offensive game. With that being, the game was decided on an interception. The Jaguars had the ball, less than a minute to go down the field, and on the very first play of that drive, Trevor Lawrence throws an interception. Not what you want at all, but a very good defensive stop from the Bills, and was overall a very entertaining game. Same can be said for all the games this weekend. Josh Allen with the tush push, with one of them getting him over 10 yards, and other tush pushes getting him touchdowns. Yes, touchdowns, plural. They just utilized this play over and over again, and the Jags defense just couldn't seem to stop it, which is pretty ironic because the Jaguars defense are one of the top defenses in the league, and Josh Allen and the Bills offensively have clearly been struggling the last few weeks. So this is a pretty crazy ending, pretty crazy game for all NFL fans to see, but very entertaining game, and it's looking bright. Hopefully the Bills can pull off an upset win against Denver, but we'll see because they are the 1 seed. So our next game is the 49ers versus the Eagles. 49ers started off really hot, very big plays at the very beginning of the game. Eagles defense looking like it wasn't going to put up much of a fight. However, that just wasn't the case. It was a very close game, pretty much the entire game, until towards the end when Brock Purdy decided to turn it back up again, and they just kind of found their groove. George Kittle suffered an Achilles injury, which everyone figured the game was probably done there. Obviously, the 49ers have suffered tons of injuries, not only this season, but it's almost like a reoccurring thing every season, and it's really crazy to see. But George Kittle out with an Achilles injury, and they still managed to win the game. Ricky Pearsall was also out, so Brock Purdy held it together. Obviously, their defense also held it together as much as they could with the injuries on the defensive side of the ball. And for them, the injuries list just keeps going on. I'm not sure how they're going to keep pushing through the injuries, but it's seeming like they can, taking the Eagles out like that. Our next game, a very defensive game, clearly, with a final score of 13-3, with the Patriots coming out on top. Drake May doing his thing sometimes, but also sometimes not doing his thing. It was a very off game for both teams. The Chargers, in the beginning of the game, even had an interception in the red zone, yet they only put up 3 points the entire game, which to me is kind of crazy. If you're going to have your defense pick off the ball, not only, let's say, in the middle of the field, but in the red zone, you would think you would at least get a touchdown, but the final score obviously says otherwise. I just find that pretty crazy. You make the playoffs, you're making all these kinds of plays ready to go into, the postseason with, Super Bowl hopes, obviously. It's actually right here on the screen. He just tips it up, and boom, they have the interception right there. You would think that they would convert off of that, not a pick six wise, but the offense comes out on the field, runs a couple plays, and has it in the touchdown. But that just wasn't the case, and I found that pretty, in my opinion, insane that they couldn't convert off of that. Final score of 13-3. Very defensive game on both sides. Hopefully the Patriots could ramp it up next week. And now, let's talk about the Aaron Rodgers upset. Mike Tomlin also stepping down as head coach, but that's being saved for another video where we also talk about John Harbaugh. Anyways, Steelers getting crushed by the Texans in the second half. The first half was pretty back and forth. Good defensive stops, both sides of the ball. Good offensive plays, both sides of the ball. Pretty even looking. The second half is where things really took off with a final score of 30-6. CJ Stroud finally getting his offensive line to hold back a little bit, which is also a problem that the Chargers saw with Justin Herbert just getting sacked. And that's something they definitely need to look into with the draft coming up in a few months. Definitely going to need to check out some O-linemen, maybe a left tackle, because that's where a lot of the defenders were coming through for Justin Herbert. But back on track with the Texans. Back and forth game to start to end was a very not back and forth game. So Aaron Rodgers, could this potentially be his last game? I mean, let me know in the comments down below, but I don't think it's crazy to say that. And that is all of the wildcard games recapped in 7 minutes. I'm very excited for these next divisional games. I'm very excited for the rest of the playoffs, let alone the Super Bowl. It's been very competitive, very entertaining, very back and forth, and in my opinion, one of the best playoffs we have had in years. And if you liked the video, be sure to leave a like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe, and we will see you in the next video. Peace out.